So with all these wonderful images that are in Ezekiel, the gospel text, as well as the psalm, of these images of farming, here in Kansas, we're in that harvest time right now. Why am I not doing any of these texts for this sermon? Well, the reason is because I do a pattern with my sermon texts, and this happens to be the one. But yet, a lot of these texts, the Ezekiel texts and the gospel texts, are speaking to people that are a lot like folks here in Kansas, people who are in the midst of the farming world, and what that means for them. And so the speakers of Ezekiel and the writer of Mark are sitting there talking to farmers as they tell these stories that are specifically directed towards them, that they would know what the context of this situation is. So, in the 2 Corinthians text, who is the context? Who is it being directed to? Well, city folk. It's directed to the people of Corinth, people who are not as familiar with farming. And also it's being directed to people who listen to raving lunatics all the time. Yes, some of these guys were pretty loony. These philosophers that would go around the marketplace speaking of different things that they were thinking about, different ways of achieving enlightenment, trying to find reason amongst a world filled with chaos. And these philosophers, not all of them were wrong, would oftentimes go through and try to find these places or find these things. And the people were hearing this all the time. They're constantly hearing these different concepts and different things that were kind of bothering them. And so Paul wanted to talk to them about it. And there was one specific concept that Paul wants to address right away. He says, yes, we do have confidence, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with God. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. Kind of a little historical note here. A lot of the Greek philosophies did not like the body. The whole goal was trying to get away from the fleshy body and to have this spiritual achievement that separated them from the body. This was part of the Greek culture, and so Paul was speaking to that, and he said, yes, there's some things that are right to it because, yes, the body has a tendency to sin. And the thing is, though, it's not you that brings about that salvation. But yet, a lot of these Greek philosophers were trying to ram this into the people's heads. The thing is, it's no different today. We have different things in our world, and I apologize if any of you like this guy. I can't stand him. Dr. Phil, and how he has a tendency of saying, you've got to take charge of your life. You've got to be the one to make this decision. You've got to seize the day, so to speak. And the thing is that, yes, to a certain extent, you need to take pride in yourself, to have some empowerment to achieve in life. But at the same time, when you get wrapped up in that, when you get wrapped up in this constant me thing, you really realize something. You realize that eventually you're going to fail. You're going to fall short of the glory of God. There's going to come a point while you're on this, whatever routine that you have to bring about change for yourself, that you're going to fail. That's just what happens. When I was working with folks who had addiction, oftentimes parts of that cycle of working with the folks was that there was a point where they were going to fall back into the addiction. And some of you who may be familiar with this realm, it's just part of how the routine goes. You fall back, but the thing is then you just get back up and continue being sober. The thing is that we work a lot in that same way, regardless if we have an addiction or not. We still sin. We go on about our lives. We're doing pretty well for most of the time and all that. But then we hit a brick wall where we fall backwards. And it's because we have sinned. We told ourselves we would never do that thing again. We told ourselves that it would never happen again. But yet it did. And it seems to happen all the time, no matter how hard we try to prevent it. And this is the nature of sin. We constantly fall short of the glory of God. And this is what Paul is trying to teach to these folks. He's saying, yeah, these Dr. Phils of St. Paul's day, they had a few things that were right. Yes, you should take some pride in what you do. Yes, you should do these things. But the thing is that when you start getting wrapped up in the self, you come to notice that you're going to fail. It's not you alone that brings about the salvation in the world. And the thing is, what is salvation? Oftentimes, folks who are trying to bring about a change for themselves almost think of that change being their salvation. If I could just change this one thing in my life, I would achieve salvation. I would be saved from the old self, the old thing that was causing pain in my family's life, the old thing that was causing pain to myself, to my job, to everything else that surrounded me. Well, the thing is, it's not quite the salvation that we're all looking for. And the thing is, we're all looking for that. We're all looking from something that saves us from the old self. And so what is it? What is the salvation? What is the thing that saves us? I remember when I was working in the Bible camp, we would throw around that word. We would always throw it around and be like, do you know what's better than pancakes? Salvation. And it would just be kind of like, okay. I would cringe a little bit because why? What does this mean? What does this mean? Why is this salvation better than pancakes or whatever else we happen to be eating that day? Salvation is that saving from the old self, saving from the old habits, saving from the old Adam, as Paul writes in some of his other letters in which we hold in our confessions. That old self, the old sinful self that is being saved, something that is being a problem in our life. And that self is saved by an outside source, because we know we can't do it on our own, because we know that no matter how much we try, no matter how far we go, we are eventually going to fail. But that source of salvation, fortunately, comes from an outside source. It comes from somewhere else. Later on in this text, Paul mentions who it's from. Christ urges us on because we are convinced that one has died for all. Therefore, all have died. And he died for all, so that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and was raised for them. This is the source of salvation. Salvation is the forgiveness of that old self, the forgiveness of our constant sin. This is the power of God for you. No matter how many times you sin, no matter how many times you hit that brick wall and fall backwards, God is right there to forgive you of that sins. Jesus died on the cross for you. If Jesus can overcome death, Jesus certainly can overcome your sin. And this is the power of God in this world. The power that no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what you have done, God will be there for you to forgive you and to be with you through all of it. The text goes on. From now on, therefore, we regard no one from a human point of view, even though we once knew Christ from a human point of view. We know him no longer in that way. So if anyone is in Christ, there is a new creation. Everything old has passed away. See, everything has become new. This is the hope that we talk about in our baptism liturgy, in our baptism theology as well, that as you are dunked into that water, the old Adam, the old self is drowned, and you are raised up into new life. Rose up, freed from your sin, freed from the guilt of your sin, to live in love with the neighbor. This is what you get to do because you were created for love for the neighbor and for love of God. Jesus Christ freed you for that, to live in that new life, to live in that new hope. And now we go out here from today knowing that we are freed, knowing that you are freed for love for one another and the neighbor.